LinkedIn. We should be going live on second.
Mm-hmm.
Give me one second. I'm just checking Instagram really quickly. Oh, cool. Okay, we're live. Awesome.
Nice.
So let's do a double check. Okay, we are. All right. We're live on Instagram. If I do this, or actually, if I give me one second. Okay. What if that works? One second. Okay, I think we're going to be good to go. So let's just go and get started. I'm going to check LinkedIn. And yeah, awesome. All right, so welcome to those who will be attend or those who will be attending, and to those who are attending. So my name is Sunny. I'm the CEO and founder of Strive Path. And today we have Viktor. How do I pronounce your last name?
Gavrielov.
Gavrielov
Mm-hmm.
from Brown. And so Viktor, you've had like quite a really interesting career path, and I'm excited to get into that. And for those who are um, joining in, the objective of today's discussion is, we've been hearing from a lot of our students and parents, um, what is it like to work in tech, right? Should I get a job in tech? How much do engineers make? Um, what really matters when it comes to tech hiring? And so I'm actually really happy to say that we have someone from Brown, Viktor, who can actually help answer a lot of those questions, because I mean, in your role at Brown, you kind of help students with a lot of these questions. Is that right?
Absolutely, and I'm glad to be here. Yeah,
That's
as an
awesome.
assistant dean at Brown, I specialize in careers in technology and tech ventures particularly, and I help students break into tech careers.
That's
So yeah,
awesome.
and we do everything from figuring out what sort of roles exist in tech that might be fitting into the students' interests, to honing their resumes, to preparing for tech interviews,
Yeah.
deciding which companies to apply to, evaluating job offers, helping them negotiate with job offers as well. So really end to end sort of, yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm looking forward to getting into that. And I guess let's quickly just kind of cover like the broad topics that we're going to discuss during today's discussion. So Um, for those who don't know, Strive Path, we are a local Bay Area business, and we focus a lot on academic and college planning. And our whole objective is to empower students and families with personalized academic and college advising, plus market insights, plus community resources. And with that, we get holistic development and, frankly, just better outcomes. I think success for us means happier students, less stressed families, and better admission outcomes. And yeah, we're looking forward to helping our students build their best selves. And so, for my background, if it's helpful, I spent a number of years in healthcare technology, which is actually, Viktor, that's how you and I got connected.
Yeah.
Um, but I was more on the commercial side. I wasn't an engineer. Although, funnily enough, when I started my academic career, I actually was a computer and electrical engineer for a year,
Mhm.
and then I realized it wasn't my jam, so I switched over to business. And I also spent some time in investment banking and consulting. So that's me. And Viktor, tell us more about you. So I'd love to learn more about your background.
Sounds good, Sunny. So I actually went to Brown and I studied computer science and economics there. And that was in 2015 is when I graduated. And in the last almost 9 years before coming to Brown, I was in various tech careers as a software engineer. It started with a really high-tech Silicon Valley startup. Then I went to Mercedes-Benz, which is obviously a very well-known car manufacturer, and was in their Silicon Valley research and development outpost. Then I joined a mental health tech startup in New York City where I met Sunny. And then lastly, I was at LinkedIn. And in the past two jobs, I was a software engineering manager. So I went into that management, people management path. And as of February, I work at Brown University in my role as assistant dean.
That's awesome. Um, Wait, so I've got so many questions. So, okay, let's kind of touch on where you are now, right? Which is Brown.
Mhm.
So you're the assistant dean. What does that mean exactly?
For me, in my role, I do a couple of different things. The reason why I'm a dean is because I have some decanal responsibilities next to my main line of work, which is helping students get into tech. So really what that means is for example, I serve on the committee of academic standing, and I help students who, for whatever reason, fell off of track getting back towards degree completion.
Hmm.
And that has nothing to do with my job in the career center, but it's something that I do in addition as a dean. So that's really why I am a dean.
That's cool. And then tell me more about this center where you work, right? Because, I think when we talk to our students a lot about assessing college fit,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that we talk about is, how, or one of the things that we discuss with our students with respect to like sussing out is the extent to which a college's career and services center actually really helps prepare you for life after college.
Mm-hmm.
So given like your firsthand experience, I mean, what makes Brown unique in that regard? And as you think about certain attributes that students and parents should look for in an effective center, what would those attributes be?
At Brown, we want to build a best-in-class career center, and we've gone really far, and it's a continuous improvements that we're doing in implementing a better and better career center. But we have a couple of different services that we provide for students. So let's start with that. We have 40 peer career advisors, which are also students that work with us every semester in helping their peers, their other students, with resumes or cover letters, for example, and helping them understand how else the Career Center can help them out.
Hmm.
Another touch point for students are the career counselors. That's not me, that's another team of people who are really expertly skilled at a variety of topics that are really across all different jobs. That
Hmm.
could be behavioral interviews, which is pretty similar across no matter where you're applying to. Or they can help students figure out um, what among many, many interests that they might have, they want to actually pursue, right? When a student
Hmm.
comes in and says, I think I have so many ideas, I just don't know which one to focus, help me with that. That's the career counselor's job to help them through that. Conversely, when they come in and say, I have no idea what I should be doing, as well, in that case, the career counselors help them really well. And then it's my team that's another touch point to the students in regards to career advising, which is the professional pathways team. And
Okay.
we have five different deans who each of us specialize in a different career field. So for me, it's technology and tech ventures. We have somebody doing
Hmm.
careers in arts and media, careers in the common good, careers in finance and consulting, and careers in science and engineering. And those five comprise the vast majority of career pathways that students choose right out of college with a bachelor's degree, because there are other avenues like med school and law school that require higher education anyway, and we have a separate advising team for that as well. But the pathways team that I just talked about, the five deans, focus on those five different pathways. And we help the peer career advisors and the career counselors be even more effective in their day-to-day work with students,
Hmm.
because we're creating resources and programming that we can get into a little bit more detail, like specifically how we support students in different pathways. So resources and programming, as well as building relationships with the industry in order to facilitate more of a exploratory process with the students.
Got it.
The materials that we build help the career counselors do better advising as well. And we also do one-on-one advising with students. For me particularly, one of the most common things is help me prepare for a technical interview. Like how do I prepare for that, for a coding interview specifically? Now, with my almost 9 years of experience in management and in the individual contributor track as a software engineer, have extensive experience in what it's like to interview um, for a coding position, for a software engineering
Yep.
position. So that helps me really relate to the student and be able to coach them on that specifically.
So two questions actually that I want to hit that I want to touch on. You
Mhm.
mentioned behavioral interview and then a technical interview. Obviously, like you've been living and breathing this. But what is a behavioral interview and what's a technical interview for those who don't know?
Yeah, so oftentimes a behavioral interview is focusing on how well a candidate might work together in a team with others. It's oftentimes focusing more on the soft skills.
Okay.
So working together well with others, being able to communicate well, um, how well do you present your ideas and are able to maybe influence stakeholders in a company with your ideas in order to drive a specific implementation in a certain way, in tech, let's say. So it's soft skills most of the time. And in a technical or coding interview, the applicants are getting assessed on their ability to write software.
Mm-hmm.
And usually that's a 45-minute-ish long interview where a specific kind of algorithm question is being asked, and the candidate needs to code a solution that then needs to pass certain test cases or cases that the company has thought of before. And so that's really for assessing that hard skill. So in order to be able to really contribute as a software engineer with the technical skills.
Sorry, I was on mute. So that's super helpful. Now, let's say you've got a student who um, is trying to assess different colleges and they're looking at these different centers, right? What are some of the things that they should have top of mind that you, in your experience, both as an applicant and now as someone who
Yeah.
helps a lot of students, what
Yeah.
should be top of mind for them?
When I look at a college and evaluate different colleges in respect to career services, I would take a look at how well the services are integrated with the overall student experience. For
Okay.
me, for example, what we do at Brown so well is like I do workshops and presentations and programming built into the almost built into the curriculum of the student's experience. So I'm going to the CS department and giving my presentations right there and then in certain times in the afternoon when there's no other class happening. So I'm
Yeah.
meeting the students where they are at in their space in order to educate them about different career topics. And so how I think it's important to assess how well are those services align with the academic programs and how are they integrated into the students experience. And I think another thing is like how can you see or you should see how well the career services build competencies um, or help students build competencies, make the students be aware of what competencies are required, like communication, leadership, technical skills, and how do they track outcomes, such as
Yeah.
job placements, etc. So we do all of that really well at Brown, and that's something that I'm really proud of, and I think that's something that you can, you as students and parents deciding different colleges can really ask critical questions when you go and visit, and see for yourself.
That's great. And then not to go off topic, but or too much, but there is a rise of co-op programs.
Hmm.
I think we have like Northeastern, Drexel, right? They're known to have fantastic co-op programs, and it's actually something that a lot of our students are looking more and more into.
Yeah.
Um, would love to kind of get your thoughts on co-op programs and um, yeah, like are they on the rise? What kind, like if you happen to know, like are there specific types of roles that are more better suited for co-op programs?
Hmm.
Would love your thoughts there.
So I personally think co-op programs are awesome because they give an experiential opportunity to students to go into the industry and apply their new learned skills and get experience quite often. And it's more often than the summer internship experience that is in like more traditional colleges like Brown. So Brown
Yep.
does not do a co-op program. Um, So that's kind of above my pay grade, I would say, probably to like see
It's all
how we
good.
could implement
Sorry
something
for
like
putting
this
you on the
into
spot.
college.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
But I think in general, I like this model a lot.
yeah,
Let's let me just quickly talk about like how Brown University may or may not have like compatibility with this. I think there is compatibility for that in general, but we also have a really what Brown's really known for is its open curriculum, which means the students are the architects
yeah,
of their own education. They can make up their own majors if they want. So this sort of like experiential learning that you get in a co-op program in the industry is baked
yeah.
into Brown in a different way. So a co-op program is great, but there are really other ways as well in order to get the education you need in order to get successful in the tech world and other jobs as well that can go in beyond just the co-op program.
I love that. That's a fantastic answer. And yeah, I think your curriculum, frankly, should it's so unique, right? Where students can really choose their own adventure. And that's also why I think like among the Ivies, like students are just extremely happy, right, at Brown. Like talk about
Yes,
ownership over your education. That's fantastic.
yes,
Um,
yes, because when you choose the every single course that you do, you will be really into it and you will retain more of the information, the learnings that you do, rather than taking a course that you just have to do for a core curriculum, let's say. So
yeah,
really, we're really proud of Brown to have that open curriculum. Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay, so let's see. So what have we learned so far? Um, there are other ways for experiential learning besides co-op programs, right? We've discussed that. With respect to the, I'd say, career services offered at a particular college, it is really important to, I think, drill into some of the specifics. So
Mm-hmm.
that means, you know, what types of employers have recruited here historically, right?
Yep.
Um, Maybe taking a look at, you know, upcoming career fairs, right? Taking a look at job postings even by major could be very helpful. um,
Yep.
like I know when I was in college, quite honestly, I very much took our career center for granted. um, but in hindsight, looking back, I'm like, wow, that actually was really helpful because a lot of the employers just kind of came to campus to recruit.
Yes,
um,
exactly. Yeah.
Now,
That's
other
right.
question
So
for
you
you.
will
Yeah,
also
sorry.
actually
Yeah.
you'll be able to see that as an applicant or a parent of an applicant, you'll be able to go into the career services website of the respective colleges that you're touring, and you should be able to see that we're calling it at Brown, we're calling it the first destination data to understand where the students go right after graduation. Like what are the
Yeah.
top employers, exactly like what you're mentioning. What are the sort of mappings between what the students studied and what they ended up going into as a career field, and that's also really interesting information. So definitely, that's another thing I would look at when looking at career services. That's usually in the purview of the career services to display this kind of data to prospective applicants.
Super helpful. I'm learning a lot already from this conversation.
I'm glad,
Okay,
Sandeep.
so let's switch now over to um, let's focus on technology, right? So careers in tech, it can be a very nebulous term
Hmm.
because I feel like tech is kind of all around us, especially like when you and I are working together. We worked in healthcare, like tech-enabled healthcare, right?
Right?
Um, you worked on the tech side, I worked more on the business side, but it was really interesting. I feel like tech is kind of touching a lot of what we do on a daily basis. How
Yes.
would you describe, like, when someone says they work in tech, like, what does that really mean to you?
I think the first thing that I think about when somebody says I work in tech is most usually it's a company that sells a product that is heavily built with software
Okay.
technology. And more and more industries and companies are going into that route anyway, which is called digital transformation. Maybe you've heard about this kind of
Yep.
buzzword in the industry. More and more companies in many more sectors are going into the route of using software or technology in order to build better products and be more competitive. So it is a really broad field and it is kind of murky and nebulous. Um, and so, yeah, the definition can vary.
Hmm. Okay. And now, as we think about some of the students that you help, right, that you work with, are there specific majors that you're focusing in on? Like, are they mostly like those who focused on computer science as like a primary motive, like primary major of studying? Like what would those majors look like for you?
Yes. So for me, I help most students I help with are looking to go into some sort of job where they will code, like build
Yep.
code, create code with software.
Yep.
But that in itself can be quite variable as well.
Okay.
You might be working on a web application, such as Riverside that we're using right now, where you
Which
will need front
still
end.
makes me nervous, by the way. We
Yeah,
still
it's
haven't
been
nailed.
working hopefully so far. It looks good, it's smooth.
It seems like it's
Um,
working, but sorry, keep going.
yeah, so but you will need engineers who build the quote unquote front end, which is the user interface that you and I are looking at. You'll
Yeah.
need engineers who build the back end, which is the processing all of that streaming data that's going back and forth between different screens and storing, let's say, a recording. You might also need a network engineer in order to make the transmission as smooth as possible, etc. So there's many different kind of specializations within software jobs. That make up a product and make it successful. And part of my job is to educate students about about the variety of engineering jobs, software engineering jobs that exist out there, where they will code, but where they might like find specializations that they're really interested in and going in. And so the computer science program will prepare them the best for these kind of coding positions. And there are also other positions besides software engineering that are really popular. One of the most popular ones is product management. And
Okay.
product managers are most often actually very adjacent to software engineers. But what product managers do is they own the direction of the product. So they will decide what new features should we build. What is the customer going to buy most likely? What's most valuable to the business? And they have to have a really great understanding of the market, of the customer, a little bit about the feasibility as well of what can be built, although they will um, ask the engineers they're working with to have the final say on the feasibility part. They also need to
Yep.
understand how well is the software going to be usable or not. And so these folks really are in the driver's seat of the product. And many students are finding that really interesting because it's such a multi kind of disciplinary, cross-functional thinking kind of job that particularly Brown with its open curriculum prepares them well for.
Yeah.
And you can go, so coding skills will be useful in that job, but so will taking an anthropology class because you're understanding
Yep.
how maybe a society works, right?
Even
Or,
negotiations.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So many soft
Sorry.
skills
Yeah.
that, yeah, exactly, like negotiation will be really useful here as well. And having just kind of an out of the box thinking ability to build on different kind of disciplines in order to make your product the most successful. So that's really a popular one. And then, like you mentioned, Sunny is kind of like in the on the biz ops side, and maybe there's a marketing side as well. So there's a
Yep.
lot of facets in a tech company that make the whole thing work. And my job again is to illuminate that. Yeah.
That's really neat. Now, one thing I want to touch on was all the different types of engineering that can exist, right? Back end, front end, infrastructure, delivery, security. How do you decide?
So it's really hard. I think it's a really fun process, but it can be a lengthy one. And by the way,
Yeah.
it can take decades to really just like go and try different things out. You don't have to have it decided right away. In fact, with the rapidly evolving landscape of technology, chances are like 10 years from now, there might be a new type of software engineer that we don't know exists today that some people will just have to learn about and just grow into. Um, but the way to learn what really sticks with your personality or your specific interests is through a variety of ways. You can do internships. That's a really common one where you just go and work in a specific company, in a specific position for a couple months and really get a deeper understanding of what that looks like. But you can go even faster in identifying what you want to do. You don't have to burn an entire summer on a thing that you don't think you're going to like.
Yep.
By facilitating or by having conversations with people in the industry who hold positions of a variety of positions and ask them what it's like day to day. What do they work on? And talk to them about what your interests are as a student and what the courses are you're thinking of taking and what courses you should be taking if you want to succeed in a specific role. That's a huge part of the career services is to help students make
Yep.
those connections. And we at Brown focus heavily on our alumni network, where we have so many wonderful alums who consistently love helping out current students in answering exactly these questions. And so that's a much faster way. It's like you spend a quick conversation, maybe it's half an hour long, and have so much more understanding that that you can take back and decide whether or not a specific type of engineering is interesting to you or not.
Super helpful. And then this might, I'm just speculating, but there might be like online assessments or tools or even like online projects you can take, right? Where it's you can get like a quick feel for what it's like to be a backend engineer. Obviously, like not the full experience, but I'm just wondering if there are any sort of assessments that you can think of, and you don't have to name them, but I'm just wondering, like, could that be a way that students can assess
Sunny, that's a
like
really
front
great
end versus
idea. I
back
don't
end?
know of a tool like this, but that does make me think of a couple of things. So what I have built for the students is um, resources for over 20 different types of engineering jobs,
Yeah.
which are just one pagers really about what they do in their day-to-day work and what they will do as they progress in their career, because oftentimes when they take on different engineering roles, take on more responsibility, new types of challenges arise, which it's great to know about in advance. And then I also point them to, which brings me to what we're talking about right now more, is I point them to a variety of articles and news sources and
Okay.
blogs that are pertaining to that specific engineering um, job title.
Sure.
And they
Yep.
can really learn, like, see what kind of technologies come out right now, what is being talked about in the industry, where is the industry heading, and familiarize themselves with the plethora of buzzwords and just like vocabulary of that specific engineering job title. And then from then they can go and research deeper about what those mean, what they're they used for, and those kinds of things. So yeah, that's something as well that I talk with the students one on one, but also have created resources, which by the way are public and anybody can go and find them.
Wait, where can they find them? Like,
So
what should they look for?
on the Career Center website at Brown,
Yep.
when you go and look for the Career Exploration Library,
Okay.
that's where you can find all of the resources that I have created about these different fields. And I'm
Oh,
happy to
very
share with
cool.
you, yeah, if you find it right now, that's even better. I can share, maybe I can share a link in here somewhere in a chat, not sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Actually, let me
Um,
just. Is
yeah,
this it right here?
let's see. Yes. So when you click on Pathways and Outcomes
Okay.
and just click on it, is it loading a new thing? Or you can go to Technology and Tech Ventures. Yeah, you can click on
There
that.
we go.
Just scroll down a little bit.
Okay.
There's a big red text right there, the Visit the Career Exploration Library right there. Yeah. So these are
This
all
is
of the
so cool,
resources I've
Victor.
created for the students. And
This
they're
is
public.
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the particular resources that I'm talking about, where I created a one pager about different jobs in tech, are found
Yep.
in the back, like the back half of this. So if you just like click next a couple of times,
Yep.
you should get to the learn about so and
Oh,
so.
this is, yeah. Learn about backend engineering.
Yeah,
Learn
yeah,
about blockchain tech, blockchain engineering.
yeah. Yep.
Cybersecurity. This is really neat.
Yep, yep. And so any one of them, if you click on them, you'll see three paragraphs about what this type of engineer does, resources and blogs and articles about that field, and then ways to get in touch with Brown alumni who work in that specific field, which you can
Yeah.
easily extend to your own school if you go to a different school, and just learn more.
Yeah, and so actually here's one with data science, which I'm sure my
Mhm.
wife would love because she is a data scientist. Oh, actually over at LinkedIn. So look at that.
That's right. Uh-huh.
That's so cool.
So yeah, this is a direct link that for data scientists actually
Yeah.
it's a pre-filtered view of all the alums from Brown
Oh, this
University
is great. Yeah.
who have data science in their profile in one way or another. So you see 4,800 people who you could talk to as a student and learn more about what they're doing, right? And you can search
Yeah.
even further in this tool. This LinkedIn tool is really powerful because you can filter by the location where they live. You can see the
Yeah.
companies that they're working for, and you can filter by that as well.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, this is actually that's a great point actually. Is if you were to just kind of look up another, let's say, San Luis, well, Obispo.
Hmm.
Let's see if I can find it. There it is. I actually wonder. So it's alumni, right? Like here?
That's right.
Amazing. So let's just type in um, hmm, aerospace.
Love that. Boom, 3,000 alums who
Look
have
at this. North.
aerospace in one way or another in
This
their
is
profile, right?
fantastic.
Yeah.
Wow.
So that's a
Yeah,
hugely powerful tool for the students to use and learn more
totally.
from people who have a connection with them through their alma
Yep.
mater, generally really willing to help out, you know? Yeah.
Yep. So that's actually kind of like an indirect way, then, right, to assess, um, I'd say, the exit options of a student who's looking to study a particular major at a particular college. Just go to
Mhm.
LinkedIn, right?
Mhm.
And you can see what the alums have done and kind of what they're doing right now. Which, by the way, is something that we actually advise a lot of our students too. Is if you're looking at a particular college and you're not sure if that college has admitted students from your high school, go on LinkedIn.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, so plug for LinkedIn. I'm sure my wife will be thrilled to hear that. Uh, so, all right, let's go. Let's keep going. So now, so we talked about, how do you determine, right, back end, front end
Mhm.
systems, blockchain. Um, the other question now is, what kind of a major should one pursue for this? Now, obviously, you're at Brown, where students kind of define their own major, but traditionally, if you put like your LinkedIn hat, if you put your quartet hat, right? Like
Mhm.
what would those majors look like, and do they really vary if you're like a front end versus back end versus blockchain engineer?
They don't vary that much. Computer science is really the one most common major that prepares students for this particular path
Yep.
in a college setting. Some adjacent ones can be like sometimes I see majors that are a combination of computer science and electrical engineering, like built into
Yep.
one. Computer engineering is sometimes another major that does have overlap with computer science courses, but oftentimes you learn more the hardware side of computer engineering rather than the software side that we've been talking about. So
Yep.
there's a couple of like cousins of computer science majors, but mostly it's focusing on the computer science major.
Okay. And then you brought up computer engineering or electrical
Mhm.
engineering.
Mhm.
I guess would computer engineering more do with like designing circuit boards,
Yes, exactly. That's right.
like the
Electrical
hardware
engineering and
versus the.
computer engineering
Yep.
both. And I think if you do electrical engineering particularly, you are focusing more on just the hardware, the circuits. But when you choose a major like computer engineering, there's going to be both hardware and software
Yep.
courses, right? So it kind of
Yep.
depends on what your interests are. Yes, circuit boards, like the actual hardware that we use day to day, could be one of the more famous ones, right, is like the NVIDIA GPUs that are being used right now so vastly in the training of AI models, right? So somebody has to
Yep.
build these chips, these graphic cards that can handle all of this, right? So that's the electrical engineers, the computer engineers who are doing that. Yep.
And that's actually a plug, by the way, for Oregon State. So if there are any computer science or students interested in computer science or computer engineering, check out Oregon State because NVIDIA's CEO, he's actually helping them build a supercomputer. And so it's a fantastic opportunity for students to learn, from the ground up. So cool. And now, other question is, we hear a lot about different programming languages.
Mm-hmm.
How should one think about like Java versus like Ruby on Rails versus C versus all the other languages that are out there?
Yeah. Most often, students will actually get exposed through their computer science class to a particular programming language because the assignments are using a particular programming language. So by the time the student finishes the undergrad degree, they'll be exposed to a variety of programming languages already.
Yep.
And something really important to note is that once you go through like learning your third or fourth computer language, like programming language, the next one is going to be pretty easy to pick up because at the end of the day, you're telling computers what to do, and that doesn't change by computer programming language. Every programming language does that essentially, but there's some
Hmm.
specialized ones in various applications like front-end languages or back-end languages, etc. Um, One way to go about seeing or deciding which to learn, perhaps even before getting into college, if you want to just kind of dabble in it and just uh, do like maybe a side project in high school or over the summer, is to look at the various sources that exist on statistics on which programming languages are the most popular ones right now. And
Okay.
I know Stack Overflow does a survey every year, and they
Okay.
have Stack Overflow is a really popular website for software engineers.
Hmm.
Um, and they do a survey every year, and to determine what programming languages the people who work as software engineers use day to day. And so you can see
Hmm.
the most popular ones there. And I would say that the safe option is to learn the most popular ones because chances are you're going to be using them later on.
Yep.
And if you're ever curious about a really brand new language or one that's just kind of up and coming, let's say Rust, for example, um,
Yep.
totally go for it. Just expect that it might not be used as often, right?
Yep.
And oftentimes, folks, maybe students or also software engineers, run into the fallacy of just kind of using a really kind of like fancy or like right now in the moment popular kind of language
Yep.
instead of a more established one. And that's not often the best thing to do because those languages are not yet well supported, for example, or it's not clear whether or not they're going to continue to be popular. So it looks
Yeah.
like you
So
found it. You found something
yep.
like this. Yeah.
So JavaScript is 62.3%. Um, it is the most. Let me see if I can zoom in.
Yeah.
HTML second, Python third,
Mm-hmm.
SQL.
Mm-hmm.
TypeScript? Okay, and then C++ is all the way down at 20. That was a language that I learned how to code in. Um,
Yes, yes.
it's like OG language. And then Rust, yeah,
Still
it's all the
very
way down
popular
here.
though. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
then if you're in data science, um, R is
Mm-hmm.
going to be a very, very popular language, and then same with SQL. Um, so yeah, this is really neat, and I think this is like another great tool for folks to check out is Stack Overflow. So if you are learning to code, yeah, this is great. Huh. Okay. Cool. I'm gonna stop sharing. Okay. So that's languages. Um, let's go back to the questions that I had for you. Now, in so now let's shift into getting a job in tech,
Okay.
and because I think you've like done an amazing job describing, different jobs in tech, right? Different languages. How do you assess like career services as well?
Mm-hmm.
Getting a job in tech. If we look at internships,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
one, why are internships important
Mm-hmm.
to a student who's in college? And then secondly, what are employers looking out for?
When they're hiring interns.
Yep.
Great. All right. So first question, why are internships important? First of all, I have to say that they're not as important as many students fear they are. What
Okay.
I hear most often is like, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out. I'm still looking for an internship. My life is over. I still don't have one, right? That's actually one of the most popular sort of like questions that I get. And I
Yep.
keep telling folks, the summer that you're doing right now is not going to determine your next 40 years, all right? So it's
Yep.
okay to do something different or find other ways to get exposed to skills and technology.
Yep.
Now, that aside, internships are really awesome, an awesome way to um, get an experience, but also just to understand, hey, is this something that I'm really interested in doing later on, right? Like, it's just
Yep.
a discovery of like, okay, this is something I want to do. Is this company interesting? Like, do I want to come back here again, right? So, oftentimes internships are kind of like a really, really long job interview, like over 3 months long, where both
Yep.
you as the intern and the company are figuring out whether there's something in the future for both of you. And so yeah, that's what internships are is honing your experience that you've built over the course of the college, and honing your skills by applying the skills that you learned in a specific project. Um,
Yep.
and then what companies are looking for, it's interesting. Oftentimes there's like a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. Like which came first, the chicken or the egg? And in the sense of internships is like oftentimes internships require previous experience in order to be a competitive applicant, but oftentimes it seems like
Yeah.
internships are the first time to get that relevant experience. So like what do you do? Which one comes first? Um, and so, in order to be an applicant who is competitive, it's a good idea to build a portfolio of projects.
Yep.
And that doesn't have to just come from internships. That could be by volunteering for a pro bono opportunity to help a startup that has a tech need, for example, that is a company like Prometheus that our common connection,
Yeah.
Margaret, founded, where you work on real impactful projects throughout the school year, perhaps pro bono, but get really good support as well on your code that you're creating, and getting reviews and getting really good feedback on it. It could be joining a hackathon during the school year and building something from scratch. And hackathons are awesome ways to, in like a short amount of time, 24 to 48 hours, get a lot done with a lot of support in that short amount of time.
Wait, and quick question.
Hmm.
Hackathon.
What is
Um,
hackathon?
what
Yeah,
is a hackathon?
that's a great question. I'm glad you're asking. Um, it's an event where most of the time students come together and form ad hoc groups and just build something that they've always just felt like building. They have like, oh, I feel like, oh, this is a problem that I want to solve using software. Let's just get together and just hack it. Um, and it's a great concept because oftentimes the most valuable feedback from your customers or your users comes from building a prototype and letting them use it and test it. And that prototype is what people try to build in a hackathon. They're hacking a solution together that it
Hmm.
doesn't have all the bells and whistles, but is a fantastic prototype that they can then validate, and also just like keep expanding on maybe in the future. But really just building something and having that be ready to go.
Okay. Awesome. So
Um,
you said second was hackathon.
Companies.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, oftentimes in
Oh, sorry.
universities, um, actually like sponsor or organize hackathons. So
Yep.
that's a great way to get into that. And they bring in industry experts who assist students in building the projects right there and then, which is that kind of very really great benefit as well. Like when you're stuck, you can call somebody to help you out. So it's well supported. All right, so we talked about pro bono projects, we talked about
Yep.
hackathons. side projects in general. That doesn't have to be over like the course of a hackathon, but just something that you build on the side and keep evolving, and then make it public, like have an actual web application that you can go and visit in a browser, right? That is also a great um, experience that you can put on your resume that will make you competitive.
Would that
Yeah,
also be
that's
like where GitHub can come into play as well?
Yeah. What's GitHub, Sunny?
Don't put, I'm not the engineer, you are.
GitHub,
But you
for
could
all
set
those
up your own like GitHub
who don't
repository,
know,
right?
yes, exactly. So GitHub is a tool where software engineers can store their code.
Yeah.
And oftentimes make it public, um, and have ways to collaborate with one another as well. So people can contribute pieces of code into the greater repository. Um, so GitHub is one of the tools that facilitates that. Is one of the most common ones. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, keep going.
Yeah.
So
So
side
I would say, yeah,
project, public
yeah.
portfolio, GitHub. Okay.
Exactly, exactly. Oftentimes, a course project or a course will yield a project that you can put online as well. So there's various ways to get the experience that makes you a competitive applicant for an internship. Okay, so yeah,
Awesome.
we talked a bit about internships and yeah, how to get them and why they're important. Yeah.
And then the other thing too that that internships can be helpful is not just assessing the function but also the company, right?
Yes.
Because there are a lot of different tech companies and there are a lot of different maturities of these tech companies too. Um,
Exactly.
and there are, I'd say, some archetypes that do better in like the larger tech companies and some that do better in the smaller tech companies. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, so working at large and small companies has its pros and cons. Pros at working at large companies, especially as an intern or new grad, is that you often get exposed to a rigorous quality control of your code.
Mm-hmm.
So you will be, it's going to be necessary to follow really rigorous quality standards in your code. So you will learn to become a really good software engineer that way pretty quickly.
Okay.
A con of going to a large company oftentimes is that you're not going to be able to have that much of an impact relative to the type of impact that you would have in a startup. Because in a startup where there's maybe just a couple of engineers, every engineer has a lot of sway over where the company is going. So that can be
Mm-hmm.
really interesting to some people, is to be more of like a creative, maybe person who wants to influence the direction of the product itself, right? So that's something that you might not do that much as a software engineer in a big company, but you
Mm-hmm.
will in a small company. Um, so there's really pros and cons, and it's different for everybody. And there's also nothing wrong with hopping back and forth and trying different things out for a couple of years each, like I did, and just to get exposed to the different things and see what sticks.
Yeah, and I think like you learn how to think almost a little bit differently too.
Mm.
I think at a smaller company, in many cases, they might not have the resources to adequately train, right? In which case, it might just be like a kind of go and
Yep.
figure it out, right?
Yep,
Now,
exactly.
that could also be very well the case at a large company. Like I know Google is kind of considered to be a bunch of startups kind of pulled together, um, but they do have a lot of resources. In a similar way, I think with startups, the roles and responsibilities might be a bit more fluid depending on the maturity of the company, right?
Indeed.
Um, you might go from individual contributor where you're the only one kind of working on where you are not managing anyone, but you are effectively kind of creating your work product,
Hmm.
and you might kind of shift between that and what's called a manager role where you're effectively managing those who are individual contributors, and you also might be uh, an individual contributor and manager at the same time.
That's
Um,
right. That can really happen. The titles can be very fluid, especially in really tiny startups. I would
yeah.
say in startups that are less than 10 people in size, fewer than 10 people in size, your job title probably doesn't say really anything about what you're actually going to do. And that in itself is also worth just exploring. And that can be really fun for a lot of people and really off-putting for another lot of people. So, yeah.
Definitely. Yeah, so I think one thing that we would encourage students to do is if you're not sure. So like I think there are a few things we can evaluate, right? One is like the type of engineer, right? In which case, talk to people, right?
Hmm.
Find opportunities where you can actually apply your skill set and see what you like.
Hmm.
The second is the environment in which you are a particular type of engineer. In which case, again, talk to people, right? And just
Exactly.
see it for yourself and see if you like it versus not.
Yeah.
Um, and I think the point that you touched on that I want to also reiterate is your internship doesn't define your next 40 years, right? It is the beginning of a path that you're on right now, and so there's so much variability that's led you kind of to that point, and there's a lot of variability after that point as well. So just like go and explore.
Yeah.
Um,
Absolutely.
so let's switch now to a day in the life,
Hmm.
and the way that we can answer this question would be because your day in the life was actually is going to vary quite a bit by what like company maturity, right? Let's say you're just fresh out of college,
Hmm.
you're you know early 20s,
Hmm.
and you are a like software engineer, we can say like back end engineer. How does your day of the life kind of compare if you were at a small company versus a large company, just very very broadly, do you think?
Really broadly, what happens is that you will often work across multiple aspects of a
Okay.
project or a product if you're working at a small startup, because that's what's needed, right? Like the whole product needs to be built, so that still needs to have a front end and a back end and like a database and deployment in the cloud, etc. So you'll likely be doing a lot of different things, and therefore learning a lot of interesting things as well. And in a larger company, oftentimes the roles are much more clearly defined, and you will be focusing on specific aspects of the product. And because by that time of a large company, usually the product is itself really large and vast, you will not be working or exposed all the time on the various different aspects of the project because it takes hundreds of people to do that, right? So, yeah,
That's
that's
a
pretty
really good
broadly
point,
it.
actually. Yeah. Yeah. And then the other thing too is as you work for, like if you work at a small company and as that product starts to evolve, you might start to kind of give away your Legos. In other words, you might start to kind of assign responsibility to a particular part of the project that you were working on to somebody else, right? Because that product is going to continue to grow and expand, um, and that's going to be a good problem for you to have, right, as an engineer.
Absolutely. Yeah, you might end up being the owner of a particular feature, but that feature is going to grow in complexity, and so you'll need more than just yourself in order to make that feature grow. And
Yeah.
yeah, you'll become a technical lead, sometimes it's called, of like your particular part of the feature or feature itself of the product, and assign, delegate different tasks to other more junior engineers oftentimes. Yeah.
Yep. And then the level of, I mean, that almost kind of leads to I'd say like a mastery, right, of that particular feature and or product because you kind of know it inside and out. You know how it was built. Um, and
Absolutely.
so, yeah, and I think there's that's a pretty like super empowered position to be in. And so if you're looking to really kind of build something and own it, I think that's it's a great career path for those who are considering it.
Absolutely. Yeah, being the owner, really having the autonomy over your product or the feature is really empowering, is really fun. I will say that the same will apply at big companies as well,
Yeah.
because e- every feature of the product will need an owner, and that owner
Yeah.
will need to be able to know that feature inside out. And so that's absolutely something that happens in both small companies and large companies. Perhaps in larger companies, it might take a more senior engineer in order to be an owner of a feature.
Yeah.
That's not that much the case in smaller startups because the features are smaller. You might become the owner much sooner. Um, and yeah.
That's awesome. Now, one other question is compensation.
Mm-hmm.
This is a hotly discussed topic among students and parents. Is I want to go into computer science to earn money, which we actually say don't do that, right?
Great, great.
Go to computer science because you genuinely enjoy it,
Yeah,
and if you've been kind of jamming on your computer and building stuff, like that's great, right?
right.
You're doing it because you genuinely enjoy it. But when someone asks, how much do programmers make? I mean, how do you answer that question?
Yeah, so right now, fresh out of college, the range of compensation is somewhere between 80,000 and $120,000,
Yep.
and it can be more in specific expensive areas like the San Francisco Bay Area or New York City, where those or Seattle, where those tech hubs exist, and cost of living is higher, so you can get even more compensation straight out of college. Maybe looking at even 150, $170,000. And then the compensation doesn't end with the cash component oftentimes. Even new grads will get oftentimes an equity component to their compensation, which means either stock um, in the company if that company is already publicly traded, or stock options in case of startups that ideally in the future become worth money. And that part of the compensation is shouldn't be overlooked either. Like that's definitely part of everything. But the vast majority of the compensation is going to be that cash component.
Yep. Yep. Super helpful. Um, Amazing. And this is a bit of a hot topic, but AI, right? ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude. Um, in your estimation, how do you think these capabilities and these tools are going to change like the day in the life and just like the role of an engineer?
Yeah, that's a great question. And at the moment, this is what it looks like. No AI tool out there is capable of replacing a software engineer.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's get that out of the way, right? Like AI is not taking away the job of a software engineer, but it is
Yep.
changing the nature of your day to day, because you might run into the capabilities and tools where you can create dozens or hundreds of lines of code in a matter of seconds by providing ChatGPT or Claude a prompt. Um, and those things can be pretty powerful. They can do pretty good code, and that you can really use. But then your responsibility as a software engineer is going to become to deeply understand that output of dozens or hundreds of lines of code that you just got
Yep.
as a result. Test the heck out of it, making sure that it really works the way that you're intending, and frankly, probably tweaking it still quite a bit. But
Yep.
it's nice to get a head start on the feature that you're trying to build. You'll be able to be more productive in that sense because you'll be able to code faster. And eventually, the way I see this play out is that um, the coding capabilities will become more and more accurate, better and better, which frees up the time of the software engineer in order to solve problems, hard problems, which is, at the end of the day, is what a software engineer does most of their time, actually, anyway. They're problem solvers. They're
Yep.
looking at a thing that has never been done before, and they have to figure out how to do it specifically for that product, for that feature, and how to make it usable and how to make it valuable, etc. So these sort of like more interesting problems, I think, will be more part of the day to day of more junior engineers in the future as well. You know? Yeah.
Yep. That's super helpful. We actually, yeah. So I think the bottom line there is not replace, but it will, I think, lead to an evolution of the responsibility, right?
Yeah.
And it actually may help engineers do their jobs perhaps even more efficiently.
Exactly. They,
Um,
they might become more productive, which
yep.
sometimes makes people question of like, oh, so does that then mean that the company just needs fewer engineers? And the possible, yes, that they will need fewer engineers. However, there will be many more interesting opportunities to that suddenly become feasible to make or feasible to build startups that can be much quicker spun up, or new
Yep.
product directions that can be much faster um, uh, as like assumed or started. And so the engineers will then go to these novel areas that haven't existed before and work there. So I do see that overall there's going to be an increased demand in software engineers, even though their job is going to be more effective and productive. That makes sense, right?
Awesome. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. Um, this has been Victor. This has been absolutely amazing. I've learned so much from this conversation. I'm sure like a lot of our viewers have too. Um, any parting thoughts before we kind of wrap this up at the top of the hour?
Um, Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure as well. I loved having this conversation. This is a topic that really excites me, and I'd say probably what's the key takeaway from today, Sunny? What do you think?
I think the key takeaway is that exploration doesn't end when you get into college,
Yeah, I
right?
like that a lot. Yep.
That and by the way, it also doesn't end in high school either. I think it's just it's imperative that we just continue to explore and try new things. And it's also, I think, important that we embrace change,
Hmm.
um, both in our professional lives, but also our personal ones too, right? And that's what I'm hearing. That's one. I think the second big takeaway that I'm hearing too is um, if you don't know, um, just talk to people, right? Reach out to folks, reach out to alums on LinkedIn, reach out to folks who have gone to your school, who are, who work in that industry. And that talk to people can also encompass working with them, right? So
Hmm.
go out and actually, again, go and explore. So I think the key takeaway for me is learning doesn't end when you enter college. I think the rest of life, learning just will continue on. So just be open to it.
Certainly, certainly. I like those. Yep, I agree with
Yeah,
you.
awesome. Well, hey, Victor, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy
My
schedule
pleasure.
to connect with us. And yeah, well, for everyone who tuned in, and I guess for everyone who's going to watch the recording, thanks so much for investing an hour of your time. And for those who are curious to contact us, our website is, I got to put this up 1 second. It is, I guess you can click that, but it's maybe I should just edit that. It is www.mystrivepath.com. So
Thanks.
check that out, and then we'll talk to you soon. All right. Thanks so much, and have a good night.
Good night. Thank you.